Welcome to Tow Business Podcast. We are still in an alternate universe here. Just a little disclaimer. We tried recording several times last night and the internet was real sketchy. The internet is just very sketchy these days. So if you hear little glitches, just bear with it, please. It's just something we all have to accept these days. Other than that, we're going to do the best we can.
Yeah, we'll try this. So bear with us if there's some lag or some glitches. We apologize, but everybody's using the internet these days for everything, streaming and meetings and all of that. And we'll do the best we can here. This is episode 7 of season 4, the last episode of this season. Then we'll have a little break. Maybe we'll throw some random stuff up in the meantime during the break, some videos or maybe a pop-up episode. But this is it for season 4. We'll take a little break. I do want to thank Tracker and Miller and We Buy Key Fobs for hanging with us again for another season. Currently, we are looking for one sponsor for next season, season 5, which will start here in a little over a month. So if you're interested, give us a shout. But we're still going to talk about Corona, but we're not going to talk about Corona. It's more of a business prep episode here. Getting yourself in a good position just in case something like this happens. I don't know that we'll ever see anything like this again. Hopefully not, but we're going to see some things pop up that impact us. Economic recessions, the housing market crashed, 2008, which we've talked about that hurt us. There's going to be things pop up, fuel spikes, just different things. So we need to be in a good position. So from an organizational standpoint, that's what we'll talk about here.
Yeah, who saw this coming? This Brad had actually mentioned he'd worked on this subject a while back, but it was not in relation to anything like what we're doing now, but a disaster is a disaster and you have to be prepared for it. And I was speaking with a local tow company owner the other day, and he says, my gosh, man, we all put away for a rainy day, but you're thinking rainy days a slow week every once in a while, not a complete loss of income for a month. So maybe this is going to cause us all to change how we look at things and run our businesses. Maybe we could come out of here a little tighter, a little more responsible, and kind of put a little more of a savings backed up there that we can use in case of an emergency. First thing we're going to start off with is we're going to talk about diversifying your business mix.
Yeah. In this pandemic that we're in, it's affected pretty much everybody, every segment of every business, but it's affected them differently. Heavy duty, not as much for your commercial, essential businesses. It's affected them not nearly as much as cash calls, individual motorists, motor clubs, the normal everyday breakdowns, accidents, tire changes on passenger vehicles. So you want to have a diverse mix to kind of hedge yourself against these things and not being subject to basically closing your doors if one customer or one piece of your business collapses. Now, you can do that within the towing space, heavy duty, light duty, medium, transport. Maybe you're a soft service only company. There's different things you can do, but you want to kind of make yourself, I don't want to say recession proof, but not, we talked to Sam Johnson a while ago, and I think he was 60+% to one customer was his business, and that fell apart pretty quickly, and he was left scrambling. So, he did a good job. He responded and bounced back from it and came back stronger. But some people probably wouldn't survive that if that one customer goes away.
Yeah, it's so tempting, especially I think for a little company, a guy running 1, 2, 3 trucks to find that little niche. You know, they might tap into that one big customer. I know a guy, there's a big dealership chain. That's his bread and butter. And luckily right now they've continued to operate. Somehow there's continuing to call them. But I don't know how that can go on much longer with this, because there's not a lot of people out looking for cars. He does a lot of that load leveling and inventory shifting, and you know, it's so easy to get comfortable with what you know. You deal with the same people every day. You don't have, you know, maybe like in his case, you're not dealing with things 24/7. You're not dealing with things, you know, on holidays and weekends, or they're closed for the most part. That can get really tempting, and that could work for you for a long time, but it's really necessary to look around and see what other little things you could pick up here and there. You know, I did that way back. I mainly fell into forklifts and containers when I was just running 2 trucks by myself a long time ago. And if this something like this happened right now, or back then, I would have been sunk. So yeah, you got to take a look at different things. Just try to spread it out. Take a look at what you're doing. It's the whole don't put all your eggs in one basket type of thing. But you know, there's so many different things to do within our business with the equipment and training that we've got. So really, this is a great time. You may have a lot of spare time on your hands right now. Grab a pad and paper and just start scratching down some ideas on other doors to knock on as we move up out of this situation here.
Yeah, I really like supplementing my business with other lines of business. And what I mean by that is towing supplements my body shop, power washing supplements my truck cleaning. I really like paying myself to do things. And by myself, I mean our company. I really like paying ourselves to do things instead of paying other people. You know, the body shop, having a body shop, I'm not going to advocate that everybody should get into the body shop or truck repair or anything like that, because it is a skill. You need training, you need a lot of experience and things like that. But if you have it already, or you have the capability to add it, you can supplement so much. You know, the hardest thing to do as a body shop owner is to get car count, get cars in. When you have an impound yard full of wrecked cars sitting right outside the door, that's a huge benefit. Now you have to do some work and you have to get that claim, but you can touch that vehicle first and start the claim process. You can find out who the owner is, start the claim for them. You can, you know, if it's at the accident scene, you talk to that owner, as long as they're not injured. You can flood yourself. It's instant work in the pipeline. Same thing with repair. You know, you hook up that tractor trailer, or even if it's small repair, you hook up that minivan and they don't really have a trusted garage or somebody they know. Hey, why don't you bring it back to our shop? So you got to think like that. I know a lot of people in our industry do the environmental side, accident scene cleanup, those types of things on their own wrecks. Instead of paying somebody else, they pay themselves. It's a line item they can charge for. It's lucrative. You know, you can look that route to diversify. Just depending on, you know, Dodge Caravans to break down every day for you to get paid is not the best way to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is there? You mentioned environmental, body shop, truck repair. It seems like the guys that really excel with AAA are usually funneling those AAA calls into their repair shop. You know, it's you've got to figure out how to play that game and slide business from one side into the other whenever possible. You know, you've already got a captive audience there. You're there towing the vehicle. It shouldn't be that difficult. If you're doing a good job with that, it shouldn't be real difficult to convince that customer that you'll also do a good job back at your repair shop. So it's time to, you know, if that's your situation, you need to consider some sales training for your drivers and your operators too. You know, they should be able to, you know, maybe incentivize it if they can get that call brought into your shop when they're out on the road. You know, a little bit of incentive, or you know, or work on things like that. Just different ideas on how to draw things in, and how to convince your staff to bring the stuff in whenever possible.
Yeah, and you know, if you set up some kind of commission or incentive process to help them out, then you know that would be awesome, and probably help them and motivate them to do that type of stuff, to push stuff in. But if you don't trust it, because it has to be done the right way, it can come off tacky, and you can affect your um, dealership customers or other repair shop customers if you're trying to hijack um, stuff that was already supposed to be coming to them. It's one thing if the customer doesn't know where they want to take it.
Right.
But if they say they want to go to XYZ Auto and you say, well, how about you take it to our place instead? But you do $20,000 a month of towing for XYZ Auto, then it's probably not a good move. So if you don't, you have to set the parameters in place and train them on why and how and what to say. But if you're not going to do that, I would like to know what percentage of companies in our industry have a sales staff, an actual salesperson or salespeople. Because if you're not going to as an owner, if you're not going to get out and do it, then you have to have somebody touching your customers frequently. Your existing customers, just checking on them, putting a face in front of them, addressing any concerns maybe that they weren't going to bring up, or it wasn't bad enough to call you about, but it irritated them. Just being in front of them helps. Touching new customers, being in front of them. That moment they have a bad experience with some other company, being in front of them, you know, quickly after that, you can land in those accounts. So if you're not going to do it yourself, then you need to pay somebody, because you need to be in front of these people.
Yeah, and that's along with that. I mean, look at the attitudes of your operators. You know, do you have good guys that are going in and they're service oriented and they're talking to the shop manager? Hey, where do you want this truck put? You know, things like that. They start developing relationships. And I was that guy before we bought the place. You know, I tried to be that driver in these heavy shops out front and developing those relationships. And, you know, that works out really well. If you've got the guy walking in and he's ornery every day and pissed off at the world, you know, that's not going to help. So there's kind of different stages of being that presence in front of that customer. So take a look at that guy. If he's grumpy at work at your shop, he's probably grumpy in front of your customers too. So just a little side note there.
Yeah, and we talked about not relying too heavily on one customer. I think it's great that there's a lot of opportunity in this industry with some apps and motor clubs that you can get some guaranteed volume right off the bat. But if that's all you're doing and you're living, you know, maybe you're making a good living, doing a good revenue with one specific app or one specific motor club and you're comfortable, that's awesome. But when something like this happens and you're forced to try to find other work during this, when there is no work, it's too late. You have to have some contingent plans and some other customers. You know, if instead of you doing 25 tows for one motor club every day, it's probably a lot safer to do 5 from 5 different motor clubs every day. That positions you a little better to survive these types of things and survive these times. Like I said, more power to you if you're making a good living or your business is doing great from one customer. But I got a feeling right now during this situation, you're probably hurting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've mentioned it in the past, you know, just from conversations with other tow company owners over the past month and a half. The guys that are just doing one thing, you know, light duty only, primarily motor clubs, private work, not all of them, obviously, but that seems to be the common trouble spot right now. If you've got some heavy to supplement, obviously trucking is not slowed down. I mean, the toilet paper, Lysol, and frozen pizzas are in extremely high demand right now. Trucks do not seem to have slowed down. It's kind of interesting. OOIDA seems to be putting the pressure on the government right now to say, see how important we are, see how important we are. We need improvements in our regulations and how trucking companies are run and how transportation companies are paid. They're really starting to turn up the heat on the president and Congress there. You know, you got a little bit of leverage here. I don't really blame you trying to use it, OOIDA. Maybe that'll trickle down and help us too. But, they're going to want the better rates, and then we're going to want better rates, and they're not going to want to use our better rates. So
somehow I feel like we're going to be the one that doesn't benefit.
Yeah.
After it's all said and done.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the frozen pizzas and toilet paper. It's like we're all in prison and we're all on the block trading these things with prison currency. This guy's got 25 rolls of toilet paper. He's rich. And it's crazy right now. And we've talked about the SBA programs. We just did a whole episode on that recently. It's real. A lot of people have their money. Some don't, some do. Depends solely on your bank. Obviously, it depends on you getting everything to your bank, but it depends on the bank you're working with. The smaller banks have been much faster, the regional banks. So if you've been with a small bank and you got everything in on time, you probably have your money, or at least an approval. So it is real money, but that brings a whole nother discussion here. What do you do with the money once you get it? You have it now. It's supposed to be used. The main purpose is for payroll, which is awesome. We want to take care of our people, but are we expected? I know the answers to this, but I'm bringing it up for discussion. Are we expected to bring, if we let people go or if we cut hours, are we expected to just go back to normal, even though our revenue and our call volume is down, some people 60+%. I would guarantee at least 40 to 50%, which is where, we are kind of at right now. Everything's not going back to normal in 8 weeks. Once we have 8 weeks to use this money once you get it, or it turns into a low interest loan, which is fine. But in 8 weeks, then what? We're still not going to need the staffing that we had prior to this. It's still not going to be back to normal. So you need to be thinking about this before you get your money, or if you have your money, you need to have an idea in place. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to pay everybody's vacation out now? They can use it whenever during the year, or make them take it now. But is that a strategy?
Yeah.
Try to burn up some of that money right now while you have it and get it out of the way. I think there's some important things that everybody needs to think of here. That's one that comes to mind for me. I don't know, Jeff, if you've thought about it or have seen any discussions or heard any creative ideas on how to use it legally.
I have not. We're still at full staff, full hours, full schedule. So ours is probably just going to be burned up where it's supposed to be burned up. It's just going to go straight to that payroll. If it ever shows up in our bank account. We ran into a little glitch, but it seems to be back on track. I've heard some people say they've tried applying multiple places. I attended 2 seminars. One was by an SBA rep. One was by Chase Bank themselves. And they said, do not do that. Do not put in multiple for one company. If you've got 5 companies, then you put in 5 apps. But the SBA, and I read this on their site, it said, even though it's going through your bank, no matter how many banks you put that app into, it's eventually going to an SBA underwriter. And when they start getting dinged with all the same EIN number coming in, there's a good chance it's just going to get rejected. They're not going to call up and ask why you did that. They're just going to throw them to the side. And that's something I read myself. I'm not trying to give you any kind of legal or financial advice there. I'm just telling you what I read and how I understood it from those programs. So be careful. Make sure you read the rules, because you really want to qualify for that stuff to be forgiven if possible. So,
Yeah. And I applied at 2 different banks. Luckily, the process was different for each. One was I uploaded everything I needed to at the time. This was specific to our bank. It was all online. They sent me a link, clicked on it, input our information and answer some questions, upload all the documents they need, the payroll, the 941s, all that stuff that they wanted. And then that was it. Another bank sent me a link and go through the screening questions, kind of some generic background information, input a few financial numbers, but no uploading at all. So I wanted to do, and I did it early. I was very proactive on it. So this was before any of the rules or any of the suggestions came out that you shouldn't do that. But the one that I submitted everything to, we ended up getting approved and got our money already. Nice. The other one, they came back a few times saying, hey, now you're on to step 2. We need you to upload these documents, which I didn't do because by that point, I didn't want to confuse the system. And I had heard some people saying you shouldn't apply multiple places, but I at least wanted to be in the pipeline and kind of have a spot. So I call BS somewhat on that because it apparently didn't penalize me, but I also didn't go through the full process with bank number 2. So I guess that was a pointless rant there. But you mentioned the rules. I found it funny the other day. I got an email that said they have finally announced the interim final rules. I have no idea what that means. To me, interim and final are contradictions, and they mean totally different things. So there are some interim final rules out there that you can find from the National Register on the SBA site. It's not an easy read by any means. So take some time and go through that, but lean on your bank. We've talked about having those relationships with your bank. Lean on them, and you should have that one person you can call and say, hey, dude, what do I need to send you? What do I need to do? Can I do this? Can I do that? And be able to get answers and not rely on deciphering, 42 pages of interim final rules. So that was a little rant on the SBA there, but, we've talked about how to kind of set us up to survive these types of situations. How do we structure our business? We've got a few bullet points here. Segueing into money, I've come up with this plan, and I think you support it as well, that I don't think a lot of people think of, and it's kind of out there. Save some money. I know. Everybody, when you get up off the floor, finish listening here. Save some money. Have an account that you can stash some money. We have an account that I fund every so often. If we have a good month, or if we sell a truck or whatever, just some unexpected, a workers' comp refund, which in Ohio we tend to get. The past 3 years, we get a refund, not because they overcharged us in the first place. They like to say it's because they've done a good job of investing that money, nice. Which is BS, because tangent number 2 here. In Ohio, we didn't have our own code in the workers' comp in Ohio for towing. We fell under trucking, which was an astronomical rate for trucking. Then all of a sudden they come out with this specific code for towing. And thank you to whoever did this. I don't know if it was our association. I don't know what happened, but thank you. Because it was almost like 250% less.
Holy cow.
Oh, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for some companies. And nothing changed but a couple digits on a code that now we classify into. So anyway, if you get these types of windfalls, save that money. Have it, everybody talks about a rainy day fund or whatever. Have it available. Don't have it as part of your operating cash flow. Set it aside. I don't care if you're old school and you have a shoebox or a safe, screwed to the floor, and you sell a truck, throw that money in there, save it. you're going to need it one day. And if you don't, awesome. Eventually you'll be able to have some fun with it. But set yourself up. Don't live nickel to nickel, because sometimes that money's going to get cut off and you're going to need some money. So I know it's crazy, but save a little bit of money.
Yeah, if you should be banking online at this point, at least having access to watch your accounts online. You should be watching your accounts online. It's so easy these days to make a second account, same bank, second account, and just set it up to auto transfer once a week, once a month. Just pick a doable amount that you literally will not miss when it transfers. And over just a little bit of time, that account starts stacking up. You never saw it. You don't really feel the pain of it being gone, and it's stacking up, and there it is for you that day you need it. Or maybe we're all lucky and no more disasters hit, and that ends up being a pretty fat down payment on a new truck, and that's something you wouldn't have had otherwise. And the other account's running fine, you're paying your bills, and all of a sudden you've got this automatic savings going on. That could be very helpful. The other thing is, we need to look at yourself kind of like you look at your employees. We've all had those employees. It feels like they can't not spend every damn dollar they made that week. There's guys that have the money spent before it's even in their account. You always hear those rumors that you don't want to pay the guy on Friday because by Monday he's asking for a loan to get him through to the next Friday. Is that you running your business? Is that how you're running your business? You might be looking at that employee and you may be guilty of it yourself. So you need to decide a certain percentage at least that you're putting back in the bank every week, every month, every year, and don't touch it. Leave it alone, because one day a virus might happen.
Yeah. Who knows what's next. If you don't have the means to save money, if you just can't, or if cash flow is too tight, have a line of credit available to you. Have a funding mechanism in place that if you need it, you can access some money without a whole lot of hoops, without a whole lot of documentation. Have it readily available to where it's there when you need it. The banking industry has come a long way in the past few years, and there's easy ways to get these lines of credit. We have one available to us that if we need it, it dings our account every night to pay it back. So if we automatically need it and money is coming off that line of credit, if there's money available in any of our other accounts at midnight that night, it takes it from those accounts and it pays it back. So we're not paying a penny more interest on that line of credit than we need to. Now, you don't want to live on your line of credit and use, a line of credit as your cash flow, but in rare accounts when you need it, or if something comes up like this, you need to have that safety net available. And it's pretty easy to get.
So, a good point to be made there is if before this happened, you didn't have enough cash flow to put a certain bit back and start building those emergency funds, maybe that's a really good cue that you need to take a look at how you're doing things. Can you cut expenses? Can you raise rates? Who can you raise rates with? How can you run more efficiently? There's got to, for the work we're doing, guys and girls, we shouldn't be that tight all the time. So take a look at what you're doing and consider making some changes there. The next thing here, have a solid web presence. It was really nice to have the portal to communicate with everybody. We didn't have to worry about how to get information out on how we're going to operate, what our temporary hours were going to be, what our temporary office policies, which who knows may end up being permanent office policies as far as entry, how many people can come in, how far you can come in, appointments, things like that. I think a lot of people are going to look at that now because, there's no reason for all the uncles, brothers, aunts, sisters to come in to release a car. there's just no reason for it. So, I mean, how dirty, how badly were things getting mucked up by all these unnecessary people coming in and out of your office? And in the past, how many of your employees got a cold and lost days at work, or got the flu and missed a day at work because some unnecessary person was in touching all the stuff and grabbing their pens and stuff all over the front counter where you release cars. So I think a lot of people are going to take a look at their policies on that. But social media, my gosh, man, it's been key here. If you didn't think social media was important, if you're that guy that says, hell no, I ain't doing Facebook or whatever, how are you communicating, man? You're not being able to notify or communicate with anybody until you're face to face. And that's what we're trying to avoid right now. So to be able to put up guidance, if you've got a good following, then a lot of your customers are already going to be aware of how you're operating right now. And, you know, it's easy enough to point people to it. Do you want to stop and sit there and have to explain to everybody that calls up what's going on? Or you can say, hey man, everything's on our website. Everything's on our social media. If you can jump over there, take a look at it, great. Saves your office some time, get your phone, you know, so you can answer another customer, repeat the same thing to them. But, you know, have that web presence. This is, now that we're trying to avoid whatever contact we can, this is the time to make use of that stuff. It's been a great tool for us so far.
Yeah, and if you're waiting for something like this to happen, to make you realize, man, I need a good website, or I need a solid Facebook to be able to communicate that we are open, and we have different hours now, or we're still running and available and can provide a safe service, or I need to be able to be found and search on Google or wherever. If you're waiting for this to happen, it's too late. That stuff takes time to build up, the way Google and these search engines index. You know, they don't index every minute of every day. They index like once a week or every 2 weeks. So any change you make, or any website you build, or any business page you put up there, it takes a couple weeks to really gain traction. And it's a long game. You build credibility and visibility over time, not immediately. So you have to have these things in place already, because waiting until this happened to say, well, I guess I better start a good website, or I better do an ad to try to get some business because we're slow, it's too late. You're not going to win. You're going to waste your money. Now, you should have that in place. And I don't think this is a time to cut marketing. You know, we have a marketing budget. We do quite a bit of paid search and some other things. I don't think this is the time to cut that. That's just a personal opinion. I know a lot of people are cutting every cost they can, and I get that. It's survival mode. But for us, that's going to be one of the last things I cut, because I don't want to go back to not being visible.
No.
You know, we've done a very good job on that, and I want to stay there, because when it does rebound, I still want to be on top.
Yep. And you know, if you need some help with that, there's Harbinger Marketing or ShopHawk. They both do a great job, and they'll help you out. And they've both been helpful to the show, which is why we mention them. We made the same decision. You know, we started looking at any temporarily unnecessary costs we could cut when we first went into this. And marketing was one of the first. We spend a lot of money on marketing. And I said, you know, this is not the time. If we can keep it going, we need to keep it going. They told us if we needed to cut some services right now, they're more than willing to do it. They'll work with us. They understand. But as we come out of this, I'd rather be on top of that wave and be in front of everybody, and everybody know that we're still out here, we're still running, and not have people wondering. And if you want to see proof of how that works, take a look at your local restaurants. There's a restaurant in town. They haven't posted anything on their Facebook page since I think the last thing I saw was Thanksgiving. Might have been Christmas, but Thanksgiving, which is really odd. They have a big New Year's bash every year. Didn't even put anything, no announcement of it, or I guess they just assume people are going to know about it. But then you've got these other places that they've got their act together, and they're posting. I mean, immediately they're posting their new hours. They're posting how the process works. Call this number. We'll bring it out to the curb for you. Here's our new to-go menu. We've changed things up to make things, come out of the kitchen a little quicker and all that. I mean, I can go to their Facebook page and I know exactly what to do. If I want to go there and get some food, I know what I can order. I know what time I can order it. And us as towers should be doing the same thing, because if we've got reduced office hours or reduced staff, or you want them to have to make an appointment to come to the office to release something, then or maybe put up reminders there. Hey, if your vehicle's been impounded by this police department, please be sure to go by there first and get your release form, whatever that process may be. Let people know ahead of time so they're not coming in contact with you, coming to your office unnecessarily in extra time. Try to cut those extra little steps out of it and lessen the contact as much as possible. And it's just a courtesy thing, really. You don't want your customers having to run all over the place and deal with different people. So try to get everything as streamlined as possible right now as far as releases go and payments and things like that. Hopefully you had all that set up already. If not, you're scrambling to figure it out now, and you're probably not doing the best job of it because everybody's trying to do it right now. But, if you're constantly looking for ways to improve and modernize and streamline your processes, how you do things like this, you're probably doing okay right now.
Yeah, it's having the mentality of continuous improvement, never being complacent and just accepting that things are good and you're going to ride it out, always looking for what's new, what's coming, what's a better way of operating. That's a mentality thing that you need to have at all times. You should always be looking for new ways to get better and more efficient and more profitable. Just a quick comment on the social media and the web presence. Google and Facebook, they're smarter than you. They have these algorithms, these formulas running behind the scenes that determine what people see, when and where they see it. If you only post when something like this happens, like the restaurant that only posts on Thanksgiving, when you do post again, nobody's going to see it.
Right.
Because Google or Facebook displays what people interact with. If you click on every article, real or fake, that bashes Trump, you're going to see more of those because that's what you engage with. Whether you agree with them or whatever, that's what you're going to see. So if you click on every post from the chicken wing place down the street, you're going to continue to see those posts. And if those posts take you to their website, automatically now you've got cookies and excuse me, you got cookies on your phone or your computer now, where they know what website you've been to, and those are the ads or those are the pages that are going to display. People pay for that. It's a game. That's how this all works. So if you don't get it, pay somebody, but know that it needs to be a continuous thing. You can't just wait until you post every 6 months that, hey, we're having this big sale, or we're 10% off on your toes right now. Nobody's going to see it. It's too late. Nobody's got that history and that formula running in the background. You're not going to see those. Nobody's going to see those. So, a little tangent there.
Tangent show.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird show, I'll be honest with you. Kind of sticking on the computer and technology space there. If you haven't already, or you weren't before this, please use some software programs, dispatch, accounting, whatever, because hopefully if you applied for these SBA programs and you needed this documentation on payroll and employer contributions on medical or 401k or anything like that, if you had to do this stuff and scramble and pull these together manually, golly, I can't imagine how bad that sucked. So hopefully this was an eye-opener that you need to have that available. I mean, I literally clicked a couple buttons and I had every report I needed, downloaded, uploaded, every kind of loaded. Um, it was super easy. This would have been a even bigger pain in the butt if I could not have done that. And to
Yep.
be able to find everything at the click of a button is huge. And from a management standpoint, knowing exactly real time how many tows I've done today, how much revenue it's brought in, and knowing how many hours of payroll I'm going to pay today, and being able to operate and know profitability and basically profit or loss for every single day, because that's what we're living right now is day to day. Everybody is. It changes every day. It's a new normal. So to be able to manage our company and know what we need staffing wise, and to know, hey, look, man, we're picking up 10 extra tows a day this week than we did last week. We can justify, schedule changes or another person or whatever, but you need to be able to have that stuff available quickly when you need it.
Yeah, I spoke with a business consultant the other day, and he had recently gotten off of the phone with a guy who I guess was wanting to be a new client of his. And, he just asked, the guy's scrambling. He doesn't know what to do. He's in panic mode. And the guy asks him, well, what do you need? What do you need to run each month? What are your bills right now? If you don't take in another dime, what do you need at the end of the month to pay all your bills? At least $1 million, he replies. Well, just he said by the nature of the business alone, he knew it was not even close to $1 million. And after he started asking additional questions, it was nowhere close to $1 million. The question after, what are your costs? What his bills are? What are your cost of goods sold? And the guy had no idea. So he didn't even know. He didn't know the basic information he needed to get started on these loans. So what a nightmare to find out right now. This is when you have to figure this stuff out. And if it's a couple clicks away in a nice piece of software you've been using and you're familiar with, man, what a difference. And for a lot of people, that'll probably end up being the difference between whether you get some of these loans or not. It's just a matter of having the stuff ready to go and being able to put your hands on it quick. I've been talking to as many towers as possible here locally. Mainly just because I'm nosy. But it's you find out real quick the guys that are still using the notebooks and the pens and no real software. They can't. They don't know specifics. I don't know what they. I don't know how they do what they do. The joke around here is most of the companies, they take the money from the customer, put it in one pocket, and then a bill comes in, and they just switch that money to the other pocket to pay the bills on the other side. I don't know how you do that, but that's kind of how a lot of them seem to run around here, just trying to move cash from one side to the other, and I don't think they're really tracking it, and I don't know that they know where it's going, and I don't know that they know what they've really got or what they've lost right now. They can't. They just don't have the data available, and it's time. Again, we mentioned earlier, this is a great time to look at how you're running your business, and you got to tighten up. You got to figure out how to run efficiently, because you never know when something like this is going to happen, and it doesn't have to be a virus. Tornadoes. We've got I'm sitting here at home and they're talking about tornadoes coming through South Atlanta later this afternoon. It could be anything. You can get wiped out. Look at Nashville not too long ago. Out of nowhere, boom. Storms come through and everything's a mess. Think about it. Storm comes through. Right now we're just simply missing business. We're missing customers. But what happens when the phone lines go down? The cable goes down, there's roads closed down. It's a whole different thing that you've got to be prepared for. So I think in our minds, we've got to start looking at disaster preparedness in a whole new light now. There's a whole new side of this that we have to figure out.
Yeah. And you mentioned I've been working on this topic for a while. That was what I was working on. It was more of a natural disaster type prep show. What happens if a tornado hits your office? You need to have all these backup things backup plans in place to be able to operate. And it should be very quickly. It should be very quickly to implement, to transfer phones, to have computers somewhere else. You should have all this planned out. So maybe we'll do an episode on that because I still have a ton of stuff on that. But you mentioned a disaster, in regards to technology and software. If you have an insurance claim because your building burnt down or a tornado hits you, you're going to have to pull these types of documents on what your revenue was and what's lost to be able to get compensated, what your building was worth, what your contents were, improvements, all this stuff. You need to be able to produce quickly because it's going to expedite everything. So to be able to click a button and get those out, it doesn't matter what the situation is. You need to be able to do that. And I feel really bad because there's going to be some good people in our industry go out of business because they didn't know how or didn't have the ability to get their hands on these documents they needed to get these SBA funds to survive temporarily. They're having no choice but to go out of business, and that's really unfortunate.
Maybe it's time to realize you don't need all that fancy stuff. Maybe it's a lot more comforting to have a larger bank account and a little less Chrome or something along those lines. Maybe you didn't need that giant new fishing boat. I don't know. Maybe you did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can define what lean means. Basically, it's knowing the minimum amount of staff and hours and trucks and equipment and all these other ancillary things that you need to perform the number of calls you do every day. That's basically what it means. What's the least amount of overhead you can get and still be able to perform all of those calls? You should have that. You should have that in the back of your mind at all times. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be hard to keep people operating bare bones, no overtime, no real incentive. I get that. That's kind of what we're all having to do right now during this thing. But when it gets back to normal, just have that in the back of your mind, knowing it all comes down to knowing what your costs are. Here's what we need. Here's how much it costs. Here's what our average tow is. So here's how many calls we have to do every day to cover that. Now, it's different every day. I get it. Saturday and Sunday, you're probably not as busy. Maybe Monday and Fridays, you're busier than Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you have to know in and out every day what it takes to open your doors and how you can get that done and how you can achieve 5, 10, 20, whatever profit margin you think is good. You need to know what it takes to get there, how many people it takes, how many calls it takes. And you need to know what those calls need to be priced at. If you don't know this stuff, then you're basically waiting to go out of business. Yeah. It's out of your control, and you need to be in control.
So I wonder how many people right now can answer what their break-even cost every day is. Coming into the office in the morning, how much do I have to make just to keep the doors open today? I mean, that's a really helpful number to know.
Scary.
It's scary. Not too long ago, I decided my son's coming up through management in the company and everything. And I've started to share some deeper information with him lately. And I think he ran out the door and threw up when I told him what the break-even number was. And but once he sat down and thought about it and started looking at what goes into that figure, it made total sense to him. He's like, holy crap. But just to know those things, we've talked about doing a show on how to develop some sort of just how to get that info, figure out what should go into that. That's a really simple one to figure out. So just knowing that, I mean, throughout the day, you can see how you're doing. I mean, day to day, it's going to go up and down, and it's really easy to see, well, wait a minute, we didn't hit that break even for 3 days. What can we do on number 4 to get this stuff up? Maybe you have to have a chat with your dispatchers, tell them, do a little better job today, You do a great job every day, but today do a little better job of selling those calls. Don't let the customer off the hook so easily today, because we've got to make up for a few bad days here. The other thing that was helpful is how quickly. I mean, the first thing I did really was figure out, okay, if everything stops today, everything shuts down today, we're not an essential business, everybody has to go home. With what is on hand, what's going to come in the next 30 days, how long can you survive? If you didn't collect another dime today, how many days can you continue to pay all of your bills and stay current? That could be pretty sobering, because I bet it's not as long as you think it is. Now the chances of something shutting down completely, probably not going to happen. You're going to have something trickle in, at least through the terms of the contracts you have. Money probably is going to continue to roll in, but it's going to trickle down. And I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. As far as I think we're still living off of some old business. We're living off some current business, but that's going to go down. I think we're going to finally feel the burn from this slow time. I think we're probably still a few weeks away before we really start seeing that real loss of income.
Yeah, like you said, we're living off old business. Let's say you got 30-day terms with your commercial customers. 30 days ago, we were doing 55% more calls. So that amount of money that's coming in is not the same that's going to be coming in 30 days from now, because we're doing 45% less business. So that overall amount of business 30 days from now that we're billing today, it's going to be less. So next month, we're going to collect a lot more than we did last month. That's simple, simple economics. Knowing what it takes to open the doors every day, it is scary. I think a lot of people don't want to know. And as long as they can open that door every morning, then that's good enough. And I think I struggled mentally with this when everything started happening. I've never been depressed in my life. I was struggling mentally because I knew exactly what it takes every day to open the doors. And, we are a good size organization with multiple terminals, multiple companies. And when times are great, that's great. But when times are bad, that's magnified. So my wife calls me, negative Nancy, but I tend to think worst case scenario because I always like to be prepared for everything. I've already thought about what I'm going to wear and what time I'm going to get up tomorrow. So I always try to plan ahead, and I knew that this was going to be bad, and it was going to, deeply impact our business. And knowing those numbers, God, it was so sobering and depressing, really, because we had no control over what was going to happen to our business. I knew my costs, but I had no control on being able to predict what was going to come in and what the government was going to do and how many people were going to be on the road. And that was very scary. But that's the only way that we could develop a plan on how to survive and how many calls we need every day, how many people we need to get that done, and how we can operate that way. That's the only way to do it, is to know those numbers.
So who would have thought that maybe some of these, like in our case, trucking companies who have pushed their terms get a little longer, that might actually be advantageous right now, to keep that money trickling in. Now you're receiving your payments spread out over 45 days instead of 30 days. Maybe that might actually be a little helpful right now. Maybe not.
Yeah, we got a letter the other day from a large body shop. They're a national chain. Everybody knows them. They said, hey, as of today, our new payment terms are 90 days. So if you bill us for something, we will now take that and process it, and we will pay you in 90 days. That's ballsy. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you just say, well, yep. I mean, I guess they're in control of their own money. They'll pay you when they pay you, but yeah, that's not a good look. But you're going to see more of that.
So, how about how about policies that you can already have in place um, to handle things like this? I mean, do you come up with a plan? Do you have a guideline that you write for yourself that, okay, if business drops 20%, we're going to cut everybody a day a week? Or, is there a way to honestly plan for this in the future? Because every disaster is different. Is there a way to have a rock solid plan outlined, or do you feel like you got a good idea how to handle things? You've got some policies in place, but I mean, you do really kind of have to stay flexible depending on the situation.
Yeah, I think you need to have some policies in place. Any kind of disaster or any kind of economic situation is going to be different. So you're going to have to customize and tweak to that situation. But, the first thing that came out of all of this was mandatory paid time off if you have it. So, you shouldn't wait to address these things when they happen. Like, oh shit, do we have sick pay? Do we have PTO? Do we have these things? And are we obligated to pay it if we have it? Like, you need to know, hey, you qualify for this because of this, and that needs to be in your manual. And some people were really scrambling when that came out. Like, do we have to pay our employees to stay home? Do we have to do this? Do we have to do this? Because they didn't know. They didn't have anything in place. But it was pretty cut and dry. If you have it, you pay this. If you don't, here's the other options. But, one thing I've really learned through all this is how unemployment works. I knew that we paid, obviously, unemployment tax and all that, but we've never laid anybody off in the history of our company, 66 years, until this. I'm not proud that we had to lay people off. I didn't want to do it. I think that was the right thing to do, unfortunately, for our business during this time. But you need to know how this stuff works, that if you have to lay somebody off because your building gets bulldozed by a tornado, or if somebody eats a bat and this virus gets out, then you need to know how this works, because you need to do the best job you can for your people and say, hey, you've probably never been through unemployment, but here's how it works. You go to this website, you do this, they're going to ask you for this, they're going to ask you for this. You need to help streamline that for them. There's still a lot of people in Ohio, and I'm sure every state, that didn't process their unemployment correctly when they got laid off, and they still haven't been paid, and it's been over a month because they didn't know what they were doing. So you need to have that kind of stuff. You need to know how that works. Hopefully you never need to use it, but you need to have that in place. One thing that I didn't think of ahead of this was having some contingency plans in your, we have a company match 401k. Our TPA, or third party administrator, stepped in when they passed some relief legislation early on in this. I think it was probably in that CARES Act that outlines some temporary guidelines for 401k. Like, here's now what you can do. You can take this amount of money out of it with no penalty, and if you're this age, or there was all kinds of different things you could do, because people needed money. They needed to be able to get to these funds to survive. So you need to think about that when you're structuring these retirement plans. Do you allow for loans? Do you allow for draws? Because you don't have to. You can build these things how you want to. That's one thing I didn't think of, that I'm glad they stepped in and asked, like, hey, do you want to implement any of these changes at this time to help your people out if they want to get a hold of their money? So you need to be familiar with all that and have that in place before it happens.
And finish this up right before we take the last break here. What is your ability to work from home? As far as management goes, are your people working off of laptops that they could just pick up and take with them? Are they willing to, instead of that, do they have a computer at home that they're willing to put some software on? Are you comfortable allowing them to put some of your software on their home computer? These are all things you've got to think about too. Right now, you've got so many people, not necessarily our type of business, but so many people had to go instantly work from home. The school kids all of a sudden have to work from home. And how many people are set up for that? I mean, we know, in the case of the schools, there's kids relying on school lunches. Those kids that are relying on school lunches for whatever reason that may be. It's unfortunate, but they're probably not going to have a shiny new laptop at home with the ability to sign on to some virtual learning. How close are how close is your office staff to that same situation? Are they set up at home? Do they have good internet? You got to take a look at that and be prepared, because when it happens, that's not the time to try and figure it out. So keeping those things in mind also very helpful. And you might want to start putting some of these ideas down in a book that everybody can reference next time quickly.
Yeah, real quick, going back to policies, during this episode here, this situation here, this pandemic, everybody's watching every penny. So they're watching every hour, every clock in, every clock out. You need to have the policies in place of how people can clock in, where they can clock in, what's allowed, what'll get kicked out. And because you don't have time right now to be looking at every single punch to try to make sure everything's legit. Hopefully your people are honest and they do everything by the book, but there's some that don't. So it needs to be foolproof, that where they can clock out, what IP address they can clock in and out on. You can geofence. They can only clock in if they're physically in a certain area on their phone or only on a computer. Whatever you want to do, that needs to be in place to foolproof, because you don't have time to be looking at that right now. So you need to have good policies and procedures. You talked about working from home. That capability obviously has been brought to light through all this. So you need to be able to, we use Zoom. So you need to be able to have meetings or, touch base with these people, communicate. It might not be a web meeting. It might just be a texting app or something like that. But you need to have ways to communicate. And a topic that I have in our natural disaster planning episode is what happens if the internet goes down. I have put in wireless cards because I didn't want to buy nothing but laptops. So, we have traditional PCs in our dispatch office, but I put wireless cards in them. So in the event that we lose internet, we have the ability to fire up some mobile hotspots, click them on, and our dispatch office functions like nothing ever happened. So think ahead, things like that. We've talked about the importance of a good relationship with your bank. Love banks, hate banks, whatever you think of your bank, you need to be in a good standing with them and have that one person that you can reach out to with questions to get answers. You need to have that. Obviously, it's been magnified because of this whole thing. But what I've learned here, which we already had, but I think I'm going to change it even more, is the importance to have multiple banks. We have a large, huge nationwide bank that we do most of our banking with, but I'm going to open up some accounts with a small local bank. Just in the event, it's not going to be our day-to-day business going in and out of there, but I want to have that relationship that if anything happens again in the future, to where they say, hey, you have to have an account with this bank to be able to get this SBA funding or whatever. I want to have that because those banks have performed much better and much faster than the big banks. I want to have that relationship just in case. Again, this is kind of a doomsday prepper mentality here, just in case anything happens. But I'm going to do that here in the next few days.
Yeah, we're looking at the same thing. We're currently doing all the banking with one place, and they're one of the huge ones. And that I think that became evident that we're pretty small fish for them, and maybe stepping into a relationship with a smaller bank where we shine a little brighter and develop a little more of a personal relationship. I think that's going to help. So yeah, we're definitely looking at spreading things around a little more also.
I mean, what would have happened if you bank with, let's just say Wells Fargo, a huge nationwide bank, And all of a sudden they said, you know what? We're not going to participate in this thing. If that's the only bank you have, then what are you going to do? That obviously that didn't happen, but I don't know if they had the choice to participate. I don't know if it's because on other SBA things, there are specific SBA lenders. Banks have to be an SBA lender. Not everybody does SBA loans.
Yep.
So maybe this was different and they had to do it. I don't know. But what if your bank said, no, we're not doing that? So maybe that's happened. If that happened to you, please reach out and let me know. I'd love to hear that story. But yeah, we would have been screwed if we use PNC. If PNC would have said, man, we're not going to participate in this program. We're not, I don't know what we would have done. We would have scrambled. So I want to have that backup plan.
So something interesting I was told yesterday, a friend of mine applied for these loans. He went to his bank. The first person he spoke to said, no, we don't deal with the SBA. Sorry, you're out of luck. He didn't like that answer. He went to the next person up and asked them about it. And they said, correct, we're not an SBA lender, but we have a relationship with a sister bank who is. Let me get you the right people to talk to. So don't necessarily take that immediate no as an answer. Do a little snooping and make sure the information you're getting is correct, because he was just one person away from finding the right person, the right bank, and he's been approved. So it worked out well for him that way. But it almost didn't.
Yeah, good. One thing I want to touch on here is knowing the ins and outs of your insurance policy. Obviously, for a natural disaster, for anything physical to your business, you're going to need to know what your coverage limits are and what, if something happens, what you do and what you can get. But throughout this, I learned that not every insurance carrier, it gives you the ability to just turn on and off coverage on trucks. That was one thing we thought about trying to save some money is, we have spare trucks and we laid some people off. We have those trucks sitting now. Can we turn coverage off to them because they're not going to be on the road? Can we turn it to only basically covered if they catch on fire sitting in the lot? What's our flexibility there? And basically what came back was, well, you don't have much flexibility. Yeah. But then they came out with some temporary things we could do, because I think everybody was probably asking. So they did have some flexibility and kind of give some temporary guidance on what we can do there. But you need to know that stuff just in the event that something happens, because, obviously it's kind of too late now. I'm trying to figure this stuff out.
And that's going to tie into the policies of your lien holders also. They may or may not allow it. One insurance company I heard talking about, they're like, look, we're going to help our customers. Lien holders might not like it. They're going to insure the stuff for bare minimum sitting on the lot, not being used. And their hopes was by the time the lien holder got notified that insurance had been reduced, not dropped, but reduced, just to try and save some money right now. Hopefully things will be getting back to normal and these things can be thrown back on before any kind of penalty or any kind of problems arose out of that. So there's some people really trying to bend those lines to try and help you out. So again, it goes back to the relationship you've got with these people.
Yeah, and a quick note on the banking relationship and maybe using a smaller bank versus a big bank. I know one friend of ours uses a big bank, worldwide probably, I don't know, but at least national bank. And he asked if there was any kind of deferment or any kind of relief for the notes on some of his trucks. And the big bank basically said, nope, there's some funding out there available from the government now, but we're not changing any of our policies. Your payments are due on 15th, and that's just what it is. And I've got some friends that have some of these smaller, regional, more personable banks that said, yeah, no problem. Hey, 90 days, don't pay us, for 90 days. We'll tack on, 3 extra months on the end of the note. and there's going to be no penalty, nothing like that. We appreciate you. So knowing it, if you haven't already, you need to ask your bank if there's any relief on your notes right now. Some banks are, some banks aren't. So if you have truck notes, maybe you got that shiny new rotator note that you got back when times were good in February. You need to know if you can, save that $10,000 a month or whatever it is and not pay it right now. You need to be asking these questions.
So we, from the outside looking in, we probably look like a bunch of nuts right now, but the reality is we had a truck built. It was at the dealer sitting there. The paperwork was signed for the financing. When all of this hit, this deal was done. And luckily through the relationships we had, we were taking the truck. There really wasn't a way out of it at this point. But before we took possession of the truck, we were able to negotiate an extended first payment date. Gave us some time, and they said if 45 days from now things aren't looking better, we'll talk about it then. But hey, okay, we're willing to do this. Take delivery of the truck, no problems. We'll just set off your first payment. There's two really big lenders that people think about when they're financing their towing equipment. And one of them was just real quick. Yeah, no problem. They shot me a form. Like as soon as I got off the phone, I had a form, filled it out. A few days later, 90-day deferment. The other one said, sure, no problem. Sent me a questionnaire. Mm-hmm. And you filled out the questionnaire. And then after that, they'd get back to you and to talk about the 90-day deferment. And it's probably been 3 weeks, haven't heard back from them, haven't gotten any more paperwork from them, and haven't gotten a response to any of my inquiries on that. So I think they might be dodging everybody right now, hoping this clears out quick enough to where they don't have to do it. But the one that did it quickly, they didn't throw the payments on the end. They just modified additional payments. They kept the loan ends at the same time, just each payment until then is a couple $100 more. And that's fine with me. So that was really helpful. But again, it goes back, you're seeing people's true colors right now and mm-hmm. their willingness to help you and how easy they make it to receive that help. So pay attention and let that factor into your decisions moving down the road, who you use in the future. Because how they handle it this time is probably a good indicator of how they're going to handle it next time.
Yeah, for sure. You need to find people that have your back no matter what happens. And that goes with employees as well. And I guess, and on the flip side, it goes for owners as well. So you need to know that everybody's on the same team here.
Well, I think you said something, I think it was 2 shows ago, and I may have even mentioned it again, pay attention to how your employees are handling this. Hey, employees, pay attention to how the owners are handling this. I assure you we are. We put measures in place. No idling. If your truck is not moving, if it's not being used, your truck should not be idling. And the way I look at it, man, if you can't do that one little thing to help the company save money right now, man, what kind of person are you?
No.
What a small thing to do. Just turn your truck off. And you can't even set that as a priority in your mind and understand how helpful that could be to the company right now. At the same time, is your boss, as a management, doing all they can to try and maintain things and do what they can? I mean, sometimes your hands are just tied. You just can't do things. But are they trying? And where's their heart? Are they trying to keep things the best they can for everybody? Yes or no? Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is all that matters right now is effort. Because there is no handbook. There is no textbook that tells you how to get through this, because this is unprecedented. Nothing's ever happened like this. And hopefully we never see it again. But if your boss is trying, awesome. That's all they can do. If your employees are trying, awesome. That's all they can do. If your bank is trying to help, awesome. That's all they can do. So just a little bit of effort. And as an owner, you need to be trying to look for ways to survive this. And you need to know all your costs, everything that we talked about. You need to be looking for ways, to find new business and all that stuff. You just need to be scratching and clawing and fighting for your business right now, because we're going to get through it, but some of us won't survive, unfortunately.
Have you heard of anyone yet?
I've seen some scuttlebutt on Facebook, but I don't know the company personally, so I don't know if I buy it.
Yeah.
There just has to be, and I'm sure there's going to be more. We've talked about the impacts to cash flow on the next 6 months. Some people just aren't going to make it, and that stinks. But I think that's the reality we're working in right now.
Yep. All righty. You don't have anything else? I guess we'll just throw out a.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, this is the last episode of season 4. We are a couple clicks away from 25,000 listeners, which is awesome. It's crazy to think about. So we appreciate that. We're going to spend the next 4 or 5 weeks here planning season 5. So reach out if you have ideas, suggestions, questions. If you have some topics you would love to see addressed, send those to us. info@tobusinesspodcast.com or Facebook message, Instagram message, whatever. We will get it. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate Tracker and Miller and We Buy Key Fobs for allowing us to do this. This is not a free thing by any means. It takes equipment, and it takes some services and some editing software and equipment, and there's some costs involved, so we appreciate them helping us cover those to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're still looking for one more for next season, so if you have any ideas, reach out.
Yeah, and something I almost never mention. We also have a Google Voice number. If you're more comfortable just calling the number and leaving your show idea on that, on the voicemail, we get that too. And heck, we may even use the audio if that's all right. That phone number is 802-395-1171, 802-395-1171. And please head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe and click. Even if you click and walk away, it's helpful to us, because YouTube, they've got some certain marks you've got to hit to open up additional abilities for their YouTube Live, stuff like that. So every click, every subscription, every view we can get puts us closer to our goals to be able to offer those additional services. So please check it out.
Yeah, use that phone number. Call, leave us some messages. I would love to do a whole episode of nothing but question and answers with phone call questions that we can play and then give our responses to. Yep. And maybe one day I would love to do a live call-in show. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think we're working in that direction.
That would be probably my favorite thing we would ever do. But yeah, use that, call, reach out. We'll put it on Facebook. We'll make that phone number available and tell people to reach out. But do that, leave us a question, and we'll do a whole show on it.
Yeah, and we're not going to just disappear for 5-6 weeks. I'm sure there'll be a couple of nighttime Facebook Lives going on here just to break things up and maybe talk about anything current that needs to be discussed, now, or that we want to discuss now. So we're not going to just disappear, but we definitely need a break. Putting this show together, finding the guests, scheduling the guests, recording, editing, it is a lot more work than you could ever imagine. And so, yeah, we do need breaks. We need to be able to regroup here and there. We definitely appreciate everybody listening to the show. So,
yeah, it really helps to be able to have these topics lined out and be able to knock out these episodes and record them ahead of time instead of scrambling last minute and putting together shows like this that are kind of a catch-all. But I think this is what a lot of people like, is just us talking about a
Yeah.
million different topics and day-to-day discussion points. So, but again, thank you. Stay safe. Keep an eye on Facebook. We appreciate everything.
Thank you.